During the 8th hearing of President Yoon's impeachment trial today, more arguments were exchanged over whether the president made orders to arrest politicians and paralyze parliament when he declared martial law, one of the issues at the core of the trial. An extra hearing was added for next Tuesday. U.S. President Donald Trump speaks over the phone with his Russian and Ukrainian counterparts, Presidents Putin and Zelensky, and says talks will start immediately to end the war. We take a closer look at what's at stake. North Korea has started dismantling a reunion center for separated families located at Kumgangsan Mountain. The South Korean authorities criticized the move as inhumane. It's February 13th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. President Yoon's impeachment trial is nearing its end, but clashes continued at the Constitutional Court today. The court has decided to add an extra hearing for next week to summarize the arguments. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young begins our coverage.
The battle of narratives continued at President Yoon's impeachment trial as the 8th and initially last session was extended with another hearing scheduled for next Tuesday. Cho Tae-yul, the head of the Capital Defense Command's first security group, said he had been ordered by his commander Lee Jin-woo to pull out legislators from the parliamentary building. Lee Jin-woo, who was questioned at the court last week, had refused to answer whether he'd been given such an order by Yoon due to his ongoing criminal trial, while the president has denied issuing such instructions. Defense Minister Kim Yong-an has claimed the order was to pull out agents or yoon, not legislators or 의원, while Special Warfare Commander Kwak Jong-gun said the president said persons or inwon. More conflicting statements emerged during the session. National Intelligence Service Chief Cho Tae-yul cast doubt over the claims made by his deputy last week that the president ordered the arrest of politicians on the night of December 3rd. Deputy Director Hong Jang-won has said he had heard 14 to 16 public figures named as targets for arrest by Counterintelligence Commander Yo In-young, which he wrote down on a notepad outside Director Cho's residence. He claimed his secretary helped decipher it later, thus there were 2 notes in total. However, Cho says based on CCTV footage, Hong was not outside, but in his office at the time he said he wrote the memo. The director also said there appeared to be 4 versions of the note, seeming to suggest there's been some fabrication on Hong's part. Cho questioned Hong's political neutrality, adding he had heard last year in a parliamentary committee meeting that Hong had made 7 separate requests regarding personnel appointments to a former opposition party lawmaker who previously worked at the NIS under the last administration. On Thursday, former Seoul Metropolitan Police Commissioner Kim Bong-sik also testified. Kim said that he had deployed police to the National Assembly to ensure public safety and denied he'd been given orders to make arrests. As witness statements continue to clash, the president's side on Thursday reapplied for Prime Minister Han Duck-soo to be called as a witness, whom the court rejected on Tuesday, and asked to re-summon Hong Jang-won. They also asked for National Police Agency Commissioner General Cho Ji-woo to be made to stand as a witness, as he failed to show up twice due to health reasons. Justices will review the new witness applications on Friday. So far, the court has accepted a total of 15 witnesses in the impeachment trial, 7 requested by the National Assembly and 8 by President Yoon's side. This compares to the 36 approved during former President Park Geun-hye's impeachment trial.
For now, the court has scheduled a 9th hearing for next Tuesday at 2 p.m, where each legal team will have 2 hours to summarise their arguments. If the hearings conclude next week, observers say the ruling could be made in early March. Park Geun-hye's impeachment was upheld in 11 days, while former President Roh Moo-hyun's impeachment was dismissed in 14 days. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Moving on, North Korea now starts destroying a reunion center for separated families near the inter-Korean border amid strained ties with the South. Seoul urges the regime to immediately stop its actions. Our correspondent Pei In-ji has this report.
The Inter-Korean Family Reunion Center, located at Kumgangsan Mountain, has been a symbol of peace, as it has been used to host tearful reunions of families separated for decades by the Korean War. Since 2009, it has hosted 5 meetings between families from the two Koreas. And the last family reunion was held there in August 2018.
고마웠어요. 여튼 들어줘서 고마웠어요. 꼭 다시 만나요.
But on Thursday, the South Korean government said the North has begun dismantling the facility in the latest sign of strained inter-Korean ties, after the regime described the South as its principal enemy. The Unification Ministry spokesperson urged the North to immediately halt its actions, adding that the government plans to consider legal measures over the action and a joint response with the international community.
The demolition of the facility is an anti-humanitarian act that tramples on the wishes of separated families and a violation of South Korea's assets.
Upon an agreement between the two Koreas, the 12-story reunion center was built in July 2008 at a cost of over $35 million. The building was the last remaining South Korean-owned facility in the Kumgangsan Mountain tourist region, as the North has been demolishing facilities there over the past few years. After the Hanoi summit between the United States and North Korea ended in failure in February 2019, Kim Jong-un visited the resort area later that year in October and ordered the removal of South Korean facilities there, saying they were shabby and that they looked like makeshift tents in a disaster-stricken area. Since 2022, the regime has destroyed other facilities, including a hotel, a fire station, and a golf clubhouse, leaving only the reunion center, which it has also started to tear down. 배은지, Arirang News.
Staying at the Unification Ministry, officials there today made public a collection of past cross-border interactions that offers an interesting insight into North Korea's shifting policy toward South Korea. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-sil explains.
Looking back at history may offer insights into the future, especially when it comes to inter-Korean relations. On Thursday, the Ministry of Unification released newly declassified records of inter-Korean talks from the mid-1980s to early 1990s as part of its ongoing efforts to enhance public access to information and deepen understanding of North Korea. One of the most striking revelations from these records is how North Korea's stance on inter-Korean division has dramatically changed, contradicting what it once asserted. In official transcripts from 1990, Pyongyang condemned South Korea's anti-tank barriers near the military demarcation line, calling them a symbol of permanent division. It stated, "It is already heartbreaking that a military demarcation line exists within our nation, but having an artificial barrier built on top of it is nothing short of a national disgrace." North Korea further demanded the removal of these barriers, saying the concrete wall in the southern part of the demarcation line must be removed. Yet fast forward to today, Pyongyang is building its own barriers along the DMZ, demolishing cross-border roads and railways, and rejecting reunification, declaring South Korea a hostile state. As North Korea reinforces division, the Ministry of Unification is shedding light on the past. It says these records provide critical insight into Pyongyang's evolving stance on division and inter-Korean relations.
Through these newly declassified documents, the public can get a vivid look at inter-Korean dialogue in the late 1980s and the records of preliminary meetings held in preparation for high-level talks in the 1990s.
Those interested in reviewing these records can visit the Ministry of Unification's Inter-Korean Relations Management Bureau website or the Information Center on North Korea in Seoul. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Talks could start sooner than later to end the crisis in Ukraine. U.S. President Donald Trump held phone calls with the leaders of both Russia and Ukraine and signaled a potential breakthrough in ending the war. Park Go-nu takes a closer look.
Hopes of peace talks to end the Russia-Ukraine war are growing. On Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump said he had a phone call lasting over an hour with Russian President Vladimir Putin, discussing securing a ceasefire in the near future.
I can say with great confidence he wants to see it ended also. That's good. And we're going to work toward getting it ended and as fast as possible.
He added he ordered top U.S. officials to begin talks aimed at ending the war. Both leaders also agreed to meet in the future, with Putin inviting Trump to Moscow. Aside from that, Trump said their first meeting would probably take place in Saudi Arabia. Trump also had a phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday, which Zelensky described as a long and meaningful discussion.
We believe that America's strength, together with us and all our partners, is enough to pressure Russia and Putin into peace.
However, one expert says some uncertain factors, including Ukraine's potential membership in NATO, remain that can complicate the peace talks from proceeding.
I think Ukraine's stance to join NATO will not be accepted. Instead, Ukraine will still likely negotiate to secure at least some form of security assistance from the US.
Setting territorial boundaries for Russia and Ukraine is another issue.
Since Russia's goal was to gain more territory, this is a part it cannot easily concede. However, the justification for this is weaker than opposing Ukraine's NATO membership. But it seems likely that Russia will give up some territory in exchange for things like US sanctions relief.
This comes with Russia currently occupying around 20% of Ukrainian territory, including Crimea and the areas of Donetsk and Luhansk that were taken before 2022. But the expert also stressed that it's unfortunate to see such a colonial-style expansion well after World War II, as countries had previously agreed to stop, and that it will now be remembered as a very bad precedent. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
In other news, Trump's reciprocal tariffs on American trade partners are expected to be announced on Thursday local time. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
U.S. President Donald Trump will announce his reciprocal tariffs sometime this week in response to tariffs being imposed on U.S. exports by other countries. According to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on Wednesday, Trump will announce his latest tariff plan before Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit this Thursday. Amid criticism over Trump's trade policies, the press secretary reiterated the U.S. president's call for even trade, adding that such policies are needed to benefit American workers and improve its national security.
And it's very simple logic as to why the president wants to impose reciprocal tariffs. It's the golden rule, which we all learned when we were growing up in school. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And far too many nations around this world have been ripping off the United States of America for far too long. And that's why the president believes this will be a great policy that will benefit American workers and improve our national security.
Meanwhile, with the reciprocal tariff announcement looming, countries have been in talks with Trump's trade officials. Earlier on Wednesday, Kevin Hassett, the director of the White House National Economic Council, said that Washington is in talks with other countries on reciprocal tariffs. According to Reuters, European Union Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security, Maris Sefcovic, held phone talks with U.S. Commerce Secretary nominee Howard Lutnick and U.S. Trade Representative nominee Jamieson Greer, as well as Hassett. Pundits say despite Trump's looming announcement on reciprocal tariffs, it's likely that he will disclose his plans for how to proceed with the tariffs first, rather than immediately announcing the tariffs to be imposed on each country. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Seoul and Washington's top diplomats are to hold their first talks this weekend in Germany on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. It's the first one-on-one meeting between South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul and his counterpart, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, since President Trump took office in January for his second term. The talks are likely to take place on Saturday. The officials are expected to discuss North Korean nuclear issues, trilateral cooperation with Japan, and bilateral economic cooperation. South Korea and the U.S. are also reportedly coordinating details to hold a trilateral meeting with Japan. South Korea continues its strong performances at the Winter Asian Games in Harbin. 17-year-old Kim Gun-hee won the gold medal in the men's halfpipe event on Thursday after the final was canceled due to weather conditions. The rising star had ranked first in the qualification round the day before. Lee Ji-oh got the bronze. Another gold medal came in women's figure skating, with Kim Tae-yeon impressing the judges the most. Meanwhile, the team of Yekaterina Avakumova, Maria Abe, Ko Eun-jung, and Chung Joo-mi secured silver in the women's biathlon 4x6 kilometer relay. Chinese AI startup DeepSeek is making waves with what it says is a cost-efficient model. But with alleged data privacy risks, it has prompted global scrutiny, market upheaval, and government crackdowns. Our business correspondent Moon Hae-ryun joins us in the studio with this topic. Hae-ryun, can you explain the controversy surrounding DeepSeek?
Well, it's just as you've said, Tungmin. So DeepSeek is currently under global scrutiny after claiming that its new R1 model can rival existing AI models in the market, such as ChatGPT, at just a fraction of the cost. And with this news, its AI chatbot topped ChatGPT and App Store downloads as users began to try this new model for themselves to test the claim. But as more and more users gathered, concerns over excessive data collection, such as keyboard stroke patterns that could be used to identify specific users, have sparked privacy fears.
Collecting keystroke patterns to identify individuals doesn't necessarily mean a better service, so that's why it seems a bit excessive.
And another issue with DeepSeek's data collection is that users can't opt out of having their data collected, unlike ChatGPT. Along with these fears regarding user data is speculation of third-party access, as the information is stored in servers in China, something that South Korea's National Intelligence Service confirmed on Sunday, as it cited that Chinese advertisers are being given unlimited access to DeepSeek's user data. Reports of content censorship also raised questions about DeepSeek's AI chatbot failing to produce accurate information due to heavy reliance on China's official stance on certain subjects.
Now, with these controversies, what has been the response from investors or industry insiders?
So with doubts that are currently surrounding DeepSeek's development process of this AI model, Microsoft and OpenAI launched a probe into suspected data exfiltration by individuals that could be linked to the Chinese firm. Companies in non-AI related sectors, such as those in South Korea, responded to data privacy concerns by restricting employee access to DeepSeek on work computers. However, global investors indicated their anticipation for DeepSeek by wiping billions of dollars off NVIDIA's market value, resulting in the biggest market cap loss ever for a US company. There are mixed views from experts and industry insiders on these reactions regarding whether this attention is warranted, with some saying that DeepSeek had the second mover advantage.
Like when you have an amazing solution coming from OpenAI, you know that it can be done. Then the question changes a little bit, shifts towards how can we do that in a more efficient way, right?
And with the current competition between the U.S. and China, how are global leaders and governments responding to this AI race?
So South Korea, Japan, and the Australian government ministries, they also moved to block DeepSeek access to computers connected to external networks, while Italy has blocked the app from app stores altogether, all of them citing user data privacy concerns. But some are saying that the reason why DeepSeek even develops like this in the first place is because of such restrictive regulations. Here's what an expert said.
I think that symbolizes that the AI competition will be severe, and although one country would like to, restrict the AI development of the other country, they will also always find innovative ways of how to develop AI.
But global leaders and firms gathered in Paris amid calls for universal AI regulation, where 60 countries signed a statement listing priorities such as transparency, safety, and sustainability for future AI development. The US and the UK, however, refused to sign the statement.
The United States of America is the leader in AI, and our administration plans to keep it that way.
US Vice President Vance stated the view that too many regulations can kill a developing industry such as AI as it takes off, and stated the Trump administration's plans to take full advantage of its position in the market. The US recently built the Stargate project, which aims to build AI infrastructure in the US worth $500 billion. As the AI race between Washington and Beijing heightens, and countries seek to establish regulations to keep them in check in an increasingly complex technological landscape, eyes are on how the balance of innovation with security will play out.
Our business correspondent Moon Hyun, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Even though it was a freezing morning across the country, early spring-like weather will be seen tomorrow, with Seoul rising up to 10 degrees Celsius during the day. These milder conditions will continue throughout the weekend. In the meantime, the atmosphere is still drying up in East Coast areas with dry weather advisories in place. In addition to dry conditions, there are preliminary warnings for strong winds in the same areas. Please take extra care not to cause any fire-related accidents. Tomorrow morning, Seoul, Daejeon, Gwangju, and Gyeongju will start off at -2 degrees, Chuncheon at -6 degrees Celsius. Daily highs will get up to around 10 degrees all over the country, with Gwangju, Busan, and Jeju at 11 degrees. It is expected to rain on the coastal areas of Jeollanam-do and Gyeongsangnam-do provinces in Jeju Island this weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors? Grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat, and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of Sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here, add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
Our lives are swept into a vortex of this intricately connected world. Providing an in-depth exploration of global security, diplomacy, economy, and culture to offer a unique international perspective. Embark on a global news journey with the Geovista today.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gan. U.S. President Donald Trump's recent diplomatic moves are making waves on the global stage. His push for peace in the Ukraine-Russia war has sparked fresh hopes, while his bold Gaza transformation proposal is stirring heated geopolitical debate. Meanwhile, Trump's hardline trade policies with allies like Japan and growing gaps in diplomacy with South Korea raise questions about the future of U.S. partnerships in Asia. For more on how Trump's high-stakes diplomacy continues to unfold, we invite Lee Moon-jung, Professor of International Studies at Koongju National University. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And also joining us is Michael Allen, Professor of Political Science at Boise State University's School of Public Service. Great to have you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with Professor Lim. Now, on Wednesday, Trump has announced that he has separate phone calls that day with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, as he ordered top U.S. officials to begin truce negotiations. He mentioned that a ceasefire is to come in the not too distant future, and this has raised hopes for a peaceful resolution. Professor, how significant is this breakthrough, and what kind of challenges might arise in implementing an agreement between the two nations?
Sure. War in Ukraine, which was, of course, caused by Russia's invasion to the Ukrainian territory, this made a lot of meanings, historical meanings, in different ways. Number one is, Russia is, of course, as we all know, is one of the UN permanent 5 members, UN Security Council's P5 member. As a country who has a veto power in the UN Security Council, they violated actually UN Charter's spirit. So definitely their kind of behavior caused a lot of those repercussion. And at the same time, of course, as we all know, Russia has the largest natural gas reserves in the world. So that is why all this, economic impacts was that much large. So Mr. Trump, again, President Trump, even when he was running as a presidential candidate, he kept emphasizing that if he were in the White House, this didn't happen, or I can't just finish the war within like the 24 hours. So those kind of the remarks actually made the rest of the world curious about what Mr. Trump, President Trump, can do after he came back to the White House. My comment on his that kind of approach, I will say that approach is basically based on realistic analysis. It looks like he perceives this world as, again, the multipolar world. Again, United States, of course, without any doubt, still is the most powerful nation in the world in many ways, of course, politically, militarily, and technologically, and of course economically too. However, at the same time, he shows that that he perceives that the whole world cannot be controlled only by the United States. So it looks like he does recognize at certain point that this is Russia's kind of how would you say the area or the regions where Russia's influence can be larger. That kind of the mutual how would you say recognition. So that reveals I would say that reveals that he is more like a realistic analysis about the situation. I think Secretary Hegseth's his remarks too reveals that kind of more realistic analysis about the world and about the current situation and even about the future.
Right. So they took a lot of consideration in realistic variables that could happen. Now, given Trump's direct communication with President Putin and the agreement to start peace negotiations immediately, Professor Allen, how do you assess the likelihood of a sustained ceasefire? And do you think this move in the shift of dynamics, this move could shift the dynamics of U.S.-Russia ties?
So Trump's initial plan, as Professor Lim had mentioned, had the United States solving the Ukraine-Russia crisis within 24 hours of him assuming the presidency. And after he had assumed the presidency, he shifted back to, well, we'll try to solve it within 100 days. And then after a call of Putin, which has happened within the last 12 hours or so, he has now decided that peace talks should happen immediately because of the good conversation he had with Vladimir Putin. Given that conversation and the remarks by Secretary of Defense Hegseth, where he has suggested that the territory of Ukraine, it would be unrealistic for Ukraine to regain control of all its territory, and that NATO membership is not really on the table. And also Putin's overall aims for the region, the indications suggest that a ceasefire that is likely to be offered to Ukraine is one that's not going to be favorable to Ukraine. Prime Minister Trudeau immediately responded to the news, suggesting that the invasion of Ukraine will end on Ukraine's terms when it wants it to end. But it certainly puts Ukraine in a difficult spot because without U.S. support, the other support it will have is from Europe and much of the rest of the world, and it will not be as much as it had previously received from the United States. And so the offer that would likely be on the table for Ukraine will be one that it does not want to accept, but may not have a lot of good options otherwise. In terms of a sustainable ceasefire, this makes it problematic. Ukraine may not accept the ceasefire in the first place, or if it were to accept it, it may not be a credible one because it suggests that Russia's illegal gains of Ukrainian territory is something that it can hold on to indefinitely from a ceasefire that may transition to a peace talk, which sends a signal to U.S. allies in Europe and elsewhere that if a country is able to invade your territory and take parts of it and is able to hold on to those for a couple of years, then the U.S. may no longer support your opposition to that country, and it may lock in those territorial gains. It changes us from a world where the idea of territorial acquisition was more of a thing of a past to a world where if you can invade a country and take territory, you can keep it for the long term. So this will send a signal to U.S. allies elsewhere that the U.S. may not have the full-throat defense of some of its allies that it's had previously. So, and we've also seen historically that Russia has used positions like this to its advantage, where if it's able to get a ceasefire, it can rebuild its military and either continue this war or redirect itself to somewhere else where it thinks it wants to gain a little bit more territory as well. So a ceasefire now, we're in the current state, and one that favors Russia, does not have long-term sustainable stability in mind, at least in the terms as currently have been suggested.
Right, so we'll really have to look into the details of the deal that would be made. But now moving on to the Gaza situation, President Trump's proposal to take control of Gaza and transform it into a Mediterranean tourist hub has sparked global debate. Professor Lim, how do you view this plan from a geopolitical and political feasibility perspective?
Well, even though I mentioned that, again, President Trump's analysis is pretty realistic and based on the realistic analysis. But sometimes what he suggests is pretty much unrealistic. Well, we'll see. Of course, I don't want to negate his intention. Probably he wants to emphasize that, whatever those past efforts or even the current ideas we have, that doesn't work, right? Again, the Gaza, we observed all this humanitarian crisis, massive humanitarian crisis over more than a year, and 70–80% of the whole region is demolished. So it should really start from the ground zero. So where can all these people really live while the reconstruction is moving on? So this is more like, again, the realistic question. So we need to think about this really more seriously, I think, than we are today. So in that sense, President Trump's that kind of, again, the big, how would you say, pretty visionary idea can provoke the regional members or even non-regional members to rethink about, again, the sustainability of the future or sustainability of the relationship between the Palestine and Israel. So again, I think this is really a time for everyone, for all of us to think about how to really reconstruct and how to make a more peaceful relationship between the two people.
Right. Now, regarding this, King Abdullah II of Jordan firmly rejected the proposal to relocate Palestinians from Gaza to Jordan. Professor Allen, how significant is this rejection for U.S.-Jordan relations and the broader Middle East peace process?
In terms of the broader Middle East peace process, I don't think this rejection has a significant impact on the likelihood of a further peace. The proposed plan by the Trump administration, by President Trump, and supported by Prime Minister Netanyahu, was one that is not a good plan in a lot of ways. It is one that called for the forcible removal, displacement, and deportation of upwards of 2 million Palestinians from the territory, which violates all kinds of international law, has questions about whether it is possible to do or illegal to do, and falls under the definition as a crime against humanity. So this was something that, while there's two people supporting this idea, much of the rest of the world was very much opposed to the idea and was not likely to support it. So Jordan's rejection of this plan was not a surprise to most people who follow along with this, not only because of the huge legal international violations of international norms and laws that it entailed, but also logistically, there was a question about, well, neither Jordan nor Egypt want to take on nearly 2 million new people within their territories. They already have hundreds of thousands of refugees that they have received from Sudan and Syria from recent conflicts in there. And in all likelihood, this also would mean that Hamas would be in possibly Egypt or Jordan. And if there was to be increased tensions between Hamas and Israel wanted to respond militarily to those tensions, it would have to do so in either Egypt's or Jordan's territory, which would destabilize the region and make this war a lot bigger than it already is presently. And so the long-term prospects of this producing peace in the Middle East just seem unrealistic, and neither of the proposed destinations for Palestinians living in those territories, in Gaza in particular, was a situation where the leaders of those countries wanted to accept the inflow of those people, because that is not just a plan that was tenable to most other observers besides Trump and Netanyahu.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's also move on to the Washington-Tokyo summit. Japan has agreed to double its defense budget by the year 2027, and we are aware that the country has been cautious about increasing its military presence due to its pacifist constitution. Professor Lim, what do you think has triggered Japan to make the latest decision?
Well, first of all, let me just highlight the characteristic of Japanese political regime. Again, it's a Westminster system, basically, which means it's pretty fundamentally different from our system. So their ways, their approach, or their policies can be more coherent or consistent from time to time. So their kind of approach is not only just Prime Minister Ishiba's decision. It's basically, it has been incremental. For example, again, the Prime Minister Abe Shinzo, when he was alive and when he was in the Prime Minister's office, again, he suggested a broader concept, again, the free and open Indo-Pacific. And Prime Minister Kishida Fumio, who was the predecessor of the current sitting Prime Minister Ishiba, he already decided to expand the defense budget. All the things has been more incrementally done, which is my first point. And second point is, of course, Japan was also concerned and was seriously thinking about what Japan should and can suggest to the United States, where again the President Trump came back. So even though the ruling party, LDP, Liberal Democratic Party, even though they don't have really the majority seats in the Diet, but still they negotiated with the oppositions, and then they decided to already again increase the defense budget, as just pointed out. These things were more like a kind of preemptive decision, considering again President Trump's more possible pressure about the ally like Japan, because President Trump is thinking about all this burden sharing with the allies. Again, he's understanding is, U.S. has been providing all this kind of, public goods, and then U.S.'s allies such as, again, Japan, of course, Korea, or even like Germany, they have been economically growing so fast and steadily. So this is kind of unfair from, again, the President Trump's point of view. So he want to adjust it, and Japan recognized it, and Japan, again, made a more, like, I would say, preemptive decision, considering all this kind of, again, changes. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Now, Trump had a recent meeting with Prime Minister Ishiba, and the atmosphere of the meeting was relatively good, and people had a lot of anticipation about it. But despite that, Trump pushed through with slapping 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. Do you think this U.S.-Japan relationship could be fractured by this latest decision, Professor Allen?
So I think it's really fascinating to look at the reports of what President Ishiba did going into the meeting. There was reports that he was relatively worried about negotiating with Trump because Trump comes off as very strong and demanding in negotiations. And there is mentioned that he wanted to focus on being positive in those interactions with Trump and not dismissing anything directly, but positively engaging with Trump's demands. Historically, Trump has demanded that Japan pay more for burden sharing with U.S. bases in Japan, as well as trying to increase its defense budget and decrease the relative U.S. budget deficit and trade with Japan as things that Trump wants Japan to do in the long term. This was, of course, under Abe previously. And Japan has done many of those things, especially in regards to increasing how much it spends on defense and its defense burden with the United States, how much it pays for U.S. bases there. So going into this meeting, it was one where it was relatively positive, and there was also other steps that Japan's taken. It has said that it's going to increase the amount of liquid natural gas it imports, and there has been this proposed takeover of Nippon Steel over U.S. Steel, where it's not a full takeover, it's a heavy investment, but they would be producing steel in the United States directly, as opposed to purely shipping it, exporting it from Japan to the United States. Collectively, this suggested, as you mentioned, a very positive relationship, and these tariffs that have been announced by the Trump administration that go into effect a little bit over a month later are ones that apply to all countries without exception. I expect the approach by Japan going forward will be this positive engagement, and they have already requested an exemption to the tariffs to try to get out of what the United States will be putting a 25% tariffs on that steel. I expect with their positive approach towards Trump that this might be something they may be able to achieve, but something where I think Japan, even if the tariffs were not ones that were reduced on Japan, Japan was still engage the United States in a positive way and try to maintain that relationship as much as possible going forward, even if there are bumps in the road.
Right. Now, Professor Allen, President Trump is also set to meet with Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India. Given Trump's emphasis on trade deficits and protectionist policies, what do you expect will be the main focus of the summit?
Based on what was happening or what has been talked about so far, I expect that Modi is likely to follow Ishiba's approach to Trump and try to engage positively. There has already been a talk between the two defense ministers between the United States and India of trying to conclude a 10-year cooperative agreement for defense cooperation, as well as there has been reduction of tariffs on motorcycles, especially Harley-Davidsons, alcohol, and some agricultural products in anticipation meeting with Trump. And India also said that it would take any type of deportations, any deportations of Indian citizens back to India, which has caused some initial disagreement within India itself about Modi accepting initial airplane of Indian deportees to India as a whole. However, I think Modi's tactic is going to be one where it also tries to positively engage with Trump and try to re-engage in this idea that India is one of the United States allies dealing with Chinese expansion and perhaps potential aggression in the region, and by being good partners that they can build a security network with other allies within the region to counteract some of the behavior that they see as negative from China. So I expect China will be a big topic, tariffs will be a big topic, but the points will be on agreement as opposed to disagreement, because Modi wants to cultivate a positive relationship between both India and the United States.
Right, so we will be able to know about the details of that meeting in the coming hours. But before we finish our discussion, we are aware that South Korea is under a leadership vacuum with the political turmoil that's going on. Now, many are concerned about the lack of early communication with South Korea's government and the second Trump administration right now. Professor Lim, how critical is it for South Korea to be able to secure a summit with President Trump soon, and what kind of issues should be prioritized in such kind of talks?
Well, definitely our people, including myself, we are very much concerned about current situations. However, still, last week, actually, I went to Washington and I spent almost a whole week in Washington, and I had chances to talk to many experts. But I also recognize that, again, this South Korea's position, geostrategic position, it doesn't change. Actually, we are still here, and economically too. So I don't think the importance as an ally and as an economic partner just goes away suddenly. So of course, our situation is very much disappointing and kind of regretful. But I think we need to consider many other changes which can be made by the series of the meetings between the President Trump and other leaders. And I think this is a time for us to really rethink the strategy, long-term strategy, not only just short and near-term, and long-term strategy for the whole nation, I would say. Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm afraid we'll have to leave our discussion at this point. But thank you so much for your insights tonight, Professor Lim, and also Professor Allen. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.
산에 오면 굉장히 일단 자연의 소리로 가득 차고 조용하거든요. 저도 그렇고 많은 사람들이 산을 통해